What's up, guys? Frosty Osty here today for another Frosty Features. Today, we have the first member we are covering of the Liberty team here in Marvel Strike Force, and she already exists in one form or another in the much like as we will find out in the comics. She exists in multiple kind of iterations. It is Peggy Carter. So, if you haven't been here before, what this is a comic book background on the tunes that you use in Marvel Strike Force, and I am your humble guide through the pages past. And with that, let's get going. According to Scopely, what this is the blog post description Marvel Strike Force, or Scopely, has given us for the character, and what I'm going to do is read this to you right now, and then we are going to rate it at the end of the feature. So, Peggy Carter. Peggy Carter rose to prominence during World War II as a key member of the Strategic Scientific Reserve, fighting alongside Captain America and spearheading critical missions against Hydra. Known for her sharp intellect, fearless combat skills, and unwavering dedication, Peggy became a symbol of strength and resilience on and off the battlefield. Even after the war, she continued her fight for justice, shaping the future of global espionage and proving that one woman could change the course of history. And with that, we will rate that at the end of the feature. So, moving on. This is Agent Carter from the comics. So, the look of Agent Carter changes drastically over time. Usually, when they have a character, they'll kind of pick one thing. She starts off as a master of disguise. There's going to be a point of debate that I'm going to bring up here in just a second. So she appears in many different forms. Most often than not, she's a blonde woman. But after the actress was introduced to the MCU, things like that, we start to see more brunette Agent Carter, Peggy Carter, more redhead Agent Carter. So it kind of spans the whole. We've got brown, we've got black. Like it goes the whole spectrum of different colors, even in the same Marvel 616 continuity. So these are things to keep in mind. Name is actually Margaret Peggy Carter in the MCU. They added, that I'm aware of. I believe it's added only in the MCU, but it's a Margaret Elizabeth Peggy Carter. But as far as I can tell in the comics, it's just Margaret Peggy Carter. But her actual name is Margaret. Her first appearance, this is where we're going to have some of that point of contention. Captain America #1. A lot of people say that it is Tales of Suspense 75 as her first appearance, but there is a secret agent that is dressed up in Captain America #1, where the secret agent ends up taking their mask off and ends up being a woman, and it is implied to be Agent 13 or X-13, which is later revealed to be Peggy Carter. So it is a big point of debate if it's Tales of Suspense 75 or 76, 75 being a weird flashback where you don't really see her, 76 where she's actually named and you see her. And then Captain America 1, where she's referred to as X-13, Agent 13, and is in disguise, and then pulls off to reveal that she is a woman agent of some sort. So these are the different things that you can check out to see how that works. Powers and abilities. Highly trained agent, but no powers or abilities to speak of, right? So Peggy Carter is a human. Aliases, the Dryad. This is where we'll talk about the Daughters of Liberty a little bit here in a minute, and we'll talk about affiliations, obviously. But the Dryad is essentially a rank within the Daughters of Liberty, and so that is the current code name that Peggy Carter goes by. And also Agent 13. Outside of that, we only really see her referred to as Agent Carter or Peggy Carter. Affiliations, S.H.I.E.L.D., of course, founder member of S.H.I.E.L.D., as far as the MCU is concerned, and is brought in abruptly in the situation with the comics. Daughters of Liberty. So Daughters of Liberty, we'll talk about that in her origin story, but a big group that go all the way back to Revolutionary War times. Actually, there actually is precedent. They precede Revolutionary War because they're built off of the team, the Daughters of Light. We'll talk about them in a bit. And then the Invaders, which we actually talked about when the Invaders came to Marvel Strike Force. We had a conversation about the different iterations of the Invaders and their World War I and World War II exploits. So definitely check those out. If you check out Iron Fist World War II, Captain America World War II, and Union Jack Frosty Features. All the plugs. Back Ground. So Agent Carter, Peggy Carter in the comics is actually from Richmond, Virginia. She's a Virginian from the 1920s, putting her right in that 23 to 25 age range, right? Not even 1920s. I believe she is actually born on 1920. So making her 23, 25 in the events of World War II, and then we see her age throughout. Her age is very important in the context of the Marvel timeline because we see, and we will talk about, Captain America running into old woman Peggy Carter. There's an awful lot of comic lore where she is an old woman. Also, this is the Peggy Carter we get in future MCU in the 159999. We mess with the old Peggy Carter, so this is very important to kind of keep in mind. But not British. MCU Peggy Carter is British, right? This is another situation where the 616 established Marvel Universe for comics, that's the Nexus, the main one. In the MCU where they refer to themselves as the 616, they cannot be the same thing, especially with alterations of characters like that. It's completely different, right? Who died? No one. So, can't be a superhero, supervillain without somebody dying. In this case, maybe not a superhero, but close enough. But nobody died in this version of Peggy Carter. She became who she was by her own volition. So before anybody dies, before anything super catastrophic happens, besides World War II starting, so you could make an argument maybe that the people that, maybe Jewish people started dying, and therefore World War II kind of ran into, however you want to look at it. At the end of the day, there was no personal connection to somebody dying for Agent Carter, Peggy Carter, to become who she is. That was her own choice. She was drafted into the Daughters of Liberty, and from that went to the French Resistance, and then ended up aiding all sorts of people like S.H.I.E.L.D., the invaders, etc., right? So at the end of the day, I think this is the third character in all of Frosty Features that actually did not have to have a character die for motivation to become the hero that they become. So there it is. Sister Aunt. So a very important character we're going to talk about today, and also in the context of Marvel Strike Force, etc., is Sharon Carter. So Sharon Carter originally was written to be Peggy's sister, and then as comics changed and retcons happened, etc., she became her aunt, which is the situation in the MCU. Sharon Carter is the niece of Peggy Carter. So she's a sister aunt. Amnesia addict. I don't know why. Sometimes one of the big things I point out in Frosty Features is the fact that a lot of characters have reoccurring plot lines. For Agent Carter, Peggy Carter, in many, many different ways, she's pretty much always has amnesia one way or the other, right? So this is how they use to retcon a lot of things. This is how they erase a lot of things, or just kind of change her moving forward. But as far as comic book arcs with her having amnesia, I think there's 4. But which is funny too, because as Peggy Carter very much is a side character in a lot of things. Captain Carter's really come out and become a big prevalent thing in comics recently. So that's starting to kind of bridge, and that's the British version that's from the MCU. But the actual Peggy Carter actually isn't involved in that many as a character that debatably has been around since 1943, I think. The 1941. As a character has been around that long, really in the context of that time, almost 80 years old at this point, over 80 years old at this point, hasn't been in a lot of arcs. Also, also the debate being 1965, right? But even so, really isn't that much on her as a regular character. So the amount of arcs that include her having amnesia is kind of impressive for the amount of comics she's actually in. Relationships. So Harrison Carter is her brother, who is married to Amanda Carter, who's her sister-in-law. We've got Sharon Carter, who for all intents and purposes, we're going to refer to as her niece, because that's correct in the comics and MCU at this point. And then Steve Rogers as a most notable ex-lover. Another ex-lover that I want to throw out, because I'm gonna reference him in a second, is Gabe Jones. But we're gonna dive into that a little bit in notable events. So with the notable events, we're gonna start off with the origin, like we do most characters that we kind of bring up. We had an origin for Captain Carter, but once again, the MCU version, Captain Carter, however you want to break it out, what if, whatever, alternate universe, Peggy Carter is quite a bit different. So Britain, Virginia, right? So we're going to talk about the origin of Peggy Carter. So the origin of Peggy Carter, she is born in Richmond, Virginia in 1920, and in growing up alongside her brother Harrison, this is very similar to the wiki, I know. She ends up falling in love. Her first love is an African American man named Gabe Jones in the 1920s, which is extremely scandalous. And in the context of comic book history, this is one of the first interracial couples that are ever introduced in comics, which was pretty crazy. So they are a thing for a while, but due to the racial climate, the tense, the worry, the scare, what have you, they end up, because of those tensions in that, like I said, the racial climate, they end up breaking up. And the night that Gabe and Peggy break up is the night that Peggy is approached by Alexa Volkov, who is with the Daughters of Liberty. So the Daughters of Liberty, there was a real life Daughters of Liberty. So in the comics, they are based off of, like I said, the Daughters of Light. Daughters of Liberty are from Revolutionary War era time, and it is a group of women that are fighting to ensure that freedom is upheld and humanity doesn't get too crazy or self-obsessed or whatever. So they kind of work to try to balance the scales for everyone is the idea. So she joins the Daughters of Liberty, and Alexa becomes Peggy's handler, her trainer, etc. So she trains her to become the secret agent that we are aware of. And then by the time we get to 1942, 1943, we have Peggy Carter. World War II starts kicking off, and Peggy Carter goes to France to join the French resistance and start working in World War II, and this is where she runs into the one, the only Steve Rogers, and they become an item very quickly and fall in love, very much a you're the only one for me type. So they become really close together. World War II happens. We have a lot of videos about World War II, a lot of Captain American videos, etc. So definitely go back and check those out. Ultimately, all of this is going really well. She ends up joining the Invaders, helping out Cap and Union Jack and all those things. We've talked about it. Ultimately, she continues to help through World War II until 1945, where we see the war end and we see Captain America go into the ice. So right before this happens, Peggy is involved in an attack with an artillery shell, and that rocks her up pretty bad and gives her her first known, that I'm aware of, bout with amnesia. And so she's trying to kind of remember what's going on. And in this time, Captain America goes on ice. And as she is recovering from her first bout with amnesia, as she's starting to get there, she gets informed that Captain America has been killed in action, and she goes comatose for a while. And as she, or catatonic, not comatose. And as she kind of comes out of that, she kind of comes to the realization that her one true love, the Captain America, is gone. And she starts to grieve in this really big way. So she starts dressing in all black and has like a veil and stuff for years and years and years. So as we see a time hop where we watch Captain America frozen solid in ice and not aging at all, we see Peggy Carter aging, wearing black, and grieving the entire time. Super, super sad. So with that, spoiler alert, both of these notable events are quite sad. So another one I want to talk about is Dr. Faustus. Dr. Faustus is a character that we don't see in Marvel Strike Force, and this is kind of a Captain America villain that we haven't really talked about on Frosty Features at all. So I figured we'd take this situation. So so we not modern anymore, but we move forward in time to Steve Rogers being thawed out. We zoom in on a Peggy Carter who is elderly Peggy Carter, still wearing black, still having a veil. We can see that on the bottom part of this picture that I have shown. Her mental faculties are deteriorating, so her family, Harrison Carter, Sharon, Amanda, all of them are like, hey, you need help. So they have her committed to Lost Souls Mental Asylum, where she is being treated by one Dr. Johann Fenhoff, who is Dr. Faustus. Dr. Faustus really has a thing out for Captain America and is always trying to kill him using really elaborate schemes. So in this situation, he's like, I'm going to cure her of her amnesia, but also I'm going to force her into telling me all about Captain America. So he locks her into a tower and is like, you're going to stay up here until you tell me all the things, but also for some reason, I'm also going to try to cure your amnesia. I'm going to try to kill two birds with one stone. So with this, by complete and utter random happenstance, Sharon Carter and her parents, Harrison and Amanda, are driving along and they crash near Lost Souls Asylum and they are captured. And in this, Captain America, who very nice, in a very nice way, is unthought and is like, you know who's hot? Sharon Carter. I'm going to start dating her. Thinking that Peggy is out of the picture heavily, so these two are romantically involved, having some sort of love situation. So as Sharon and her parents are kidnapped, Captain America and Falcon track down the missing Sharon, and they are led to the Lost Souls Asylum, where they go and try to do a rescue mission on Sharon, and lo and behold, they get apprehended and drugged. So we have Captain America, Falcon, and Sharon Carter wake up in a World War II situation where Dr. Faustus likes to do. Is a very common thing that he does. Is he just makes up a bunch of sets and props and goes all theater with people, trying to mess with their heads. So he makes all his people dress up as Nazis. So they're fighting these people that are dressed as Nazis, etc. And what they're trying to do is throw off Captain America's mental faculties, because you know he struggles, especially earlier in the comics, where after he's uniced, he struggles with trying to understand culture shock, etc. So he's always kind of on this fine tip. So most of the time when you see Dr. Faustus going up against Captain America, this is the sort of tomfoolery that we come up against. So we're in World War II, etc. And it's in this time that we find out that, or excuse me, Captain America finds out that Peggy Carter is in fact still alive, and she's up in this tower and being captured. So Captain America dashes to this tower and he climbs it, sort of like Rapunzel without the hair, and he gets to the top. And he finds that Peggy Carter is being held captive by Dr. Faustus's assistant partner, Dr. Wolfgang. And in trying to be like, you can't stop us, Captain America, whatever, I've got this old lady, Peggy Carter's like, nah, bro, and kills him. Just straight up murks him, takes him out. And so when Captain America gets up there, we see that Peggy has taken this out. And Dr. Faustus comes in and is like, I could take you, Captain America. And Captain America's like, I don't think you can. And he drops him like a sack of potatoes. So with this, Captain America, pretty easily, honestly, in the context of comics, saves Peggy Carter. So that now this is where we meet old lady Peggy Carter with Captain America. Like, this is how they meet and they realize things are going on. And he's like, I still love you. This is amazing. Like what happens in the MCU. He rescues her, and they take her to the home of Harrison and Amanda, because also her amnesia, because yeah, she's being treated for the mental deterioration. It's another version of it's another amnesia thing that goes on. So her running into Captain America helps that, and it starts to heal. And so we get a little jump forward in time where she's at Harrison, and it's like Harrison, Amanda, and then Sharon just happens to be there, and they're partying, whatever. Peggy's getting a lot better being around Steve Rogers, and they're like, we're gonna go on a lovely walk together, and we're gonna walk around the yard, and it's gonna be great. So they're walking together, and there's a whole thing with her feeling super young because she's around Captain America, and they're so in love. And then they walk by a pond, and the story sort of ends on this thing where they're looking into the pond. And even though she feels so young and she's with the young guy that she remembers and loves, she sees how much time has passed in her own face. I would drop a mic, but it's currently mounted. Oh, there it is. Good stories. There's a bunch of others working with the Invaders. We also currently in modern comics, we have different versions and timeline hops. So we have young Peggy Carter in the modern situation running around with Captain America and Sharon Carter. But I like this original run, because eventually we do have a situation where there was a short period of time in World War II where Peggy Carter had a lover, and then when Peggy Carter dies when she's old, that lover comes back and tries to sabotage and kill Captain America at her funeral, and it's all crazy. I like the old lady Peggy Carter stories. I am not all the way, admittedly, not all the way caught up on the ones where she's young and doing stuff in modern times. I only vaguely know about it. She's going by Dryad now. So Dryad being the scientific leader of the Daughters of Liberty, and then there's a magic leader because magic is taught by Agatha Harkness, all the daughters and all this stuff. So there's a lot of little intricacies and stuff that kind of work into it, but those are the notable events I wanted to point out because this is my channel and I like old lady Peggy Carter. Moving on. Power level. So Marvel Strike Force, they don't care about power levels, but here on Frosty Features, we do. Now, the way that this works, if you are a multiversal threat, it means you can end reality. Not just your reality, but all realities at your own will. Being able to topple the multiverse whenever you want. Universal means you can end maybe your reality, hop on over to another one, and end that one. Cosmic means you have power on the low end on a planetary scale. Being able to destroy things like planetary bodies, all the way up to a solar system or galaxies with enough time. Nuclear means you have power equivalent to that of a nuclear bomb, leveling things like small cities, or with enough power, time, effort, etc., maybe taking out something like a planetary body. Super soldier means you are beyond all human capabilities, being able to take out things like brick walls all the way up to a city block. City means that you are a human being that is trained to the absolute and utter peak of human ability, very much like an Olympic athlete. In Marvel, we have a lot of mercenaries, secret agents, ninjas, etc. at this level. And then there's Greg. Greg is the undead Asgardian that's spawned by Hela in Marvel Strike Force, and without the Undying Team or Hela to back him up, Greg is absolutely worthless. So, theoretically, if time passes by and Frosty Osty gets hit in the head and gets amnesia and ends up in a nursing home, getting nursed back to health to remember his arch foe, and then behold, one day I am eating my pudding and slowly regaining my faculties, and out the window, across the courtyard, I see him enter. Greg, coming to visit a injured Hela from Marvel Rivals, I guess. Or probably Marvel Strike Force, because this is what this is for. He's coming to visit Mommy, and I see him and instantly remember what's going on. So I take my pudding cup and take on the fiend in the courtyard. I versus the undead Asgardian Greg, who has the undead Asgardian physiology, and for the sake of argument, we like to equate him to a regular human being. So a Frosty Osty with his faculties totally restored at the sight of his old foe could theoretically beat the crap out of him in front of his mother, Hela. And with that, we are going to say Greg is equal to that of a regular human being, like as is a Frosty Osty, right? So in the case of Peggy Carter, we have no discernible powers whatsoever. We just have a highly trained individual. She is the perfect candidate for a city level hero. But this also depends on where you read from her, right? So if you're reading Captain Carter, she's obviously in Super Soldier. If you are reading the modern young version, she is City to Super Soldier because of the training and additional scientific things and maybe bionic enhancement kind of situations. Also, for a good chunk of comics, we've got old lady Peggy Carter, who is very firmly in the Greg spot. So very much it depends on which comics you're reading to find out where Peggy Carter resides on here, but we very much are between City and Greg for regular Peggy Carter, the only exception really being Captain Carter being firmly cemented in the Super Soldier situation. According to Scopely, we obviously, so usually I use the Got It Twisted as a method of rating this for when they mix up MCU and comics. For this particular description, I'm saying they didn't even try. It is extraordinarily vague. It pretty much is like, hey, we got this lady that fights and she does secret agent stuff. Cool, right? There's no background other than that she's from World War II. It doesn't even explain why we're getting young version of her, because the version that we are getting in Marvel Strike Force very much looks like the version that is currently running around in modern times. So it's kind of convoluted. So this specific blog post description is trash. And that is Frosty Features Peggy Carter. I hope that you all enjoyed it. Please let me know your favorite Peggy Carter or Captain Carter moments in the comments. I'd love to hear more. If I got anything wrong, either way, I would love to hear from you. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe here on YouTube. It doesn't cost you anything but a couple of clicks. As a reminder, on Sundays, we stream where we do Frosty Features live on here on YouTube and at the Twitch link above, 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. You can watch Frosty Features live. I hope that you all enjoyed this. I hope that you all have a fantastic weekend. Most importantly, y'all, stay cool. Ching. I added the ching.